Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to explore the idea of intelligence. Going way beyond those typical IQ tests everyone always talks about.
Yeah.
Like, what does it even, I mean, what does it really mean to be smart? We're going to be using Howard Gardner's frames of mind as like a starting point for this.
Right.
We've also got some cool stuff from Jean-Paul Sartre,
Mhm.
and even some super fascinating neurobiological research. So yeah, buckle up because we're about to challenge some pretty long-held beliefs about intelligence.
It really is amazing, isn't it? How often we're kind of led to believe that there's only one way to be intelligent when, like, in reality, human potential is so much more diverse, so much more fascinating.
I know, right?
Like,
Like we're always trying to judge a fish on how well it climbs a tree.
exactly.
Gardner has this great analogy about the hedgehog and the fox. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a perfect way to think about this whole
Yeah.
thing. The hedgehog represents that traditional single view of intelligence, right?
Yeah.
And then the fox, with all its different skills and its cleverness and everything, that symbolizes the multiple intelligences that we're going to be talking about today.
Oh, I love that. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of that story that Gardner tells about this 12-year-old boy in the Caroline Islands. He's training to be a master sailor,
Oh, wow.
navigating just by the stars, the ocean currents,
Hmm.
using this incredible knowledge that you wouldn't ever find on like a standard IQ test. But would you call him unintelligent?
No way.
Absolutely not.
Hey, not at all.
So it really makes you question,
Mhm.
those traditional measures, doesn't it?
It does. It makes you realize how limiting, how limiting they can actually be. And this is not a brand new debate or anything. I mean, think about thinkers like Plato and Aristotle.
Oh, yeah.
They were wrestling with these very same questions like centuries ago.
That's so true. But things really seem to shift with the rise of like the IQ test
Hmm.
in the early 20th century. What was the initial goal of those tests? Was it supposed to be a good thing?
It was. It was. It absolutely was. I mean, Alfred Binet and Theodore Simon, the guys who really pioneered intelligence testing, their goal was to help identify students who needed extra help,
Right.
not to create some kind of ranking system.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
How something intended for good can kind of morph into something.
Well, less so.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, this idea of like a single measurable intelligence, it just kind of took root.
Yeah.
And IQ tests became widely used and often really inappropriately. And then we started seeing all the limitations, right? Cultural biases and the questions, the focus on only specific types of knowledge. And then they weren't even that good at predicting success outside of school.
Right.
And there's this one case I always think about, this man who had uh, like severe brain damage that affected his problem-solving abilities.
Wow.
But he scored near genius level on an IQ test. So what does that even tell you?
I mean, that's a perfect example of how reducing intelligence to a single number is just, it misses the entire point.
It does.
Yeah.
And
It's like judging a book by its cover. You're completely ignoring all the rich complexity within.
that's such a good point. It's like it's a good segue to talk about Jean Piaget.
Yeah.
He went in a totally different direction with all of this, right? Like he was focusing on how kids' thought processes actually develop rather than just if they got the answer right or wrong.
Yeah. His focus on the why behind the what was really revolutionary.
Mm.
He wasn't interested in whether the child gave the right answer. He wanted to know how they got there. He shifted the focus from the product to the process.
Right, like how their brains were actually working.
Exactly.
That was a huge step forward for sure.
Yeah.
But even Piaget's theories, I mean, they had limitations, right? Because kids develop in more individual, more nuanced ways than his stages fully captured.
Absolutely. I mean, development is not always this linear thing. It's more like a dance.
Yeah.
There are steps forward, steps back, lots of improvisation.
Oh, that's a great way to think about it. So, okay, we can see that both like IQ tests and Piaget's theories, while they were valuable, they don't totally capture, the real complexity of intelligence. So, what were some of the other approaches that researchers started exploring?
Well, one of the big ones was the information processing view.
Okay.
So think of it like this. Imagine trying to build a computer simulation of how humans think.
Wow.
like breaking down thinking into step-by-step algorithms.
Almost like trying to decode the brain's software.
Exactly. It's all about understanding the precise mechanisms of thinking,
Mm.
but this approach it also had its blind spots.
Yeah.
It was really focused on logic and language-based tasks.
So kind of like those traditional IQ tests again?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they were neglecting things like creativity and intuition, and even like practical, real-world skills.
Right, right. What about things like creativity or intuition or those practical real world skills? Like how do you measure that?
Right, exactly. And then there was the symbol systems approach, which focuses on how we use all these diverse symbols to communicate meaning. Language is one of them, but then think about music, gestures, even physical objects.
It makes you think about how a dancer expresses emotion through movement.
Right.
Or how a mathematician, uses those abstract symbols to unlock like these complex relationships. It's like each domain has its own language almost.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good way to think about it. And David Feldman, who was one of the pioneers in this area, he argued that intelligence isn't just, problem solving. It's about mastering entire domains of knowledge, entire domains of skill. And he identified like universal domains like basic language.
Yeah. Yeah.
And cultural domains like reading and writing,
Right.
and even unique domains like a chess grandmaster's expertise.
It's making me think about prodigies.
Yes.
Like they seem to master these unique domains at an incredible pace. It's almost like they're hardwired for it somehow.
Yeah, prodigies they're a fascinating example of the interplay between natural talent and environment.
Right.
They have these amazing abilities, but they also often have the right kind of support systems in place to really nurture those talents. It's a good reminder that even with a predisposition, opportunity plays a critical role.
It really does. Okay, so we've moved from this narrow this IQ centric view to a more expansive view, acknowledging these diverse domains and this importance of environment.
Yeah.
But what about the brain itself?
Right.
What's happening in there when we talk about intelligence?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. Neuroscience is showing us that genetics and the brain's capacity to adapt, its plasticity, they actually work together to shape intelligence.
So it's not nature versus nurture, it's nature and nurture. They're like constantly interacting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there have been all these studies that have shown that enriching environments, they actually lead to physical changes in the brains of rats.
Mm.
So they develop larger cerebral cortexes,
Yeah.
and they have more neural connections.
Wait, so you're saying experience can literally change the physical structure of the brain?
Yeah,
That's amazing.
think about that. Yeah. And it's not just rats either. Think about canaries. The brain regions that are linked to their song learning, they actually change size depending on the complexity of the songs that they're learning.
No way.
So during intense learning periods, those areas actually grow larger.
That's incredible. So it's not just about having more brain cells, it's about how the connections between them are refined based on what we learn, based on our experiences.
Exactly. That's
Right.
that's exactly right. And here's just something else interesting. Bigger isn't always better when it comes to the brain.
Yeah.
During development, the brain goes through this process called pruning. So it's actually eliminating unused connections. It's all about streamlining for efficiency.
So it's like decluttering your mental closet to make room for the things that you really use.
I love that analogy. That's a great way to put it.
Thanks.
Yeah, and this process is heavily influenced by our experiences, by our environment. It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
It really is. It makes me think about all the research that's been done on bird song learning. These little birds, they listen, they imitate, and then they refine their songs until they achieve mastery.
Yeah.
It's like a perfect example of how complex skills are acquired through combination of instinct, of exposure, and dedicated practice.
It is. It's a beautiful illustration of how nature and nurture really work together to create something amazing. And it kind of makes you wonder if we can understand something as intricate as birdsong learning at a biological level, what other secrets might the human brain hold about intelligence.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. I mean, we've covered so much already,
Yeah,
from those historical theories to those brain studies. I mean, we've only just scratched the surface, haven't we?
we have. We really have. So in the next part of our deep dive, we're gonna explore how different areas of the brain specialize in really specific cognitive functions, and how this relates to the whole concept of multiple intelligences.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to map out the brain. Stay tuned.
Aye.
Welcome back. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. The brain is like a whole universe unto itself.
Yeah, yeah, it really is.
We were talking about how experiences can like literally reshape it. I mean, it just blows my mind.
It is pretty amazing.
So, how do all those neurons and synapses, how do they all relate to these different types of intelligence?
That's a great question. Um, for a long time, scientists thought about the brain as this single, like, undifferentiated organ.
Right.
But eventually, a more modular view emerged, showing that different regions of the brain actually specialize in very specific functions.
Oh, that's interesting. It's like those old maps, where they just had like "Here be dragons" written on them.
Exactly.
And then we started exploring more, and we realized there were all these continents and mountain ranges and these incredibly complex ecosystems.
I like that. And that shift in understanding, it actually happened pretty gradually. And one of the key breakthroughs came from Roger Sperry's work with split brain patients.
Oh, right, right. Those are the folks who had the connection between their brain hemispheres severed.
Exactly. Yeah. So by studying split brain patients, Sperry was able to demonstrate the distinct roles of the left and right hemispheres.
Oh, wow.
And for example, the left hemisphere is often the dominant one for language processing.
Oh, that makes sense. So that's why damage to certain areas on the left side of the brain can lead to those specific language problems we were talking about earlier, like trouble with grammar or understanding really complex speech.
Exactly.
It's like, I don't know, different parts of a factory, specializing in different parts of production.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And over time, researchers have been able to map language functions in the brain in just incredible detail, really
Oh,
showing how specific regions handle things like grammar, comprehension, vocabulary, even just the sounds of speech.
it's amazing to think about, isn't it? All those intricate neural circuits just humming away in there, allowing us to communicate, to express ourselves.
It really is. And the shift toward a more modular view of the brain. It has really huge implications for how we understand intelligence in general.
So instead of having one giant intelligence muscle, we actually have a whole toolbox full of specialized intelligence tools, each with its own strengths and areas for growth.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. And it lends support to Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, right?
Right.
If if different parts of the brain are responsible for things like language, spatial reasoning, musical ability, well, it stands to reason that those abilities might develop somewhat independently.
That's fascinating. It makes you wonder though if each intelligence has its own kind of neural basis, does it also have like its own developmental trajectory, its own critical periods for learning and growth? Like, is there a prime time to nurture certain intelligences?
Yeah, that's a question that researchers are actively exploring right now, and there's growing evidence to suggest that yeah, different intelligences might very well have their own optimal windows of opportunity. We know, for instance, that the brain is just the most adaptable during early childhood.
Well, yeah, I mean that makes sense. It's so much easier for kids to pick up languages, to play music, to develop those athletic skills. Like their brains are little sponges, just soaking everything up.
Exactly, and it suggests that there might be ideal times to expose children to different types of experiences that really nurture those specific intelligences. I mean, it really makes you rethink our whole approach to education, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. What if instead of having this one size fits all approach, we tailored learn to match each individual's unique intelligence profile? What if we helped kids discover and develop their strengths much earlier?
Well, that's the really exciting possibility that Gardner's theory opens up. It's a call to create learning environments that are much more individualized, that are much more engaging, where kids can truly flourish.
I'm starting to understand why you're so fascinated by this whole topic. It's not just about understanding the brain. it's about unlocking human potential.
It absolutely is.
Uh,
And it moves us away from those old limiting ideas about intelligence being this single fixed thing.
yeah.
It's something
Yeah.
that we can just neatly measure on a test. We're all intelligent in different ways, and that's something to really celebrate.
Absolutely. So where do we go from here? I mean, we've laid this foundation about the brain's modularity, those specialized intelligences. What's the next layer of this deep dive?
Well, now we can start to explore those specific intelligences in more detail. We'll look at the evidence from psychology, neurobiology, cultural observations, even the lives of exceptional individuals like prodigies.
Oh, I'm ready to get specific. Lead the way. Okay, so let's actually dive into some of these specific intelligences.
Yeah, let's do it.
We've talked about the brain being like a toolbox.
Right.
So what are some of the tools that we actually find in there?
Well, I like that analogy, and one of the most prominent tools we find is linguistic intelligence. The power of words.
Oh yeah.
It's the ability to use language effectively, to communicate, to persuade, to entertain, even to think.
Right. So we're talking about poets and writers, comedians, those masterful storytellers.
Yeah.
I wonder though if there are like different facets of linguistic intelligence. I mean, like is writing a novel the same kind of intelligence as giving a rousing speech?
Hmm. That's a really insightful question, and it's something that researchers are still exploring.
Hmm.
Um, but we do know that even very young children, they demonstrate just incredible linguistic abilities. I mean, they pick up language so fast.
It's unbelievable how fast they do.
It really is. It makes you think that maybe there's some kind of like language instinct that's just wired into our brains.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, language is so fundamental to human communication, to human culture.
It really is. And when we look at the brains of people who really excel in linguistic domains, we often see unique patterns of activity, even structural differences.
Oh, that's interesting. It reminds me of that story about Jean-Paul Sartre from Gardner's book. The kid was writing like novels at 5 years old.
Oh,
I
wow.
mean, it really makes you think about the roles of natural talent and environment.
Yeah, it's a great example of that. I mean, Sartre obviously had a real gift, but he also grew up surrounded by books, by all this intellectual stimulation. It highlights just how important it is to nurture those early sparks of potential.
I agree. And what about when something disrupts those linguistic abilities? Like if someone has a brain injury, for example.
Right. Well, that's when we see even stronger evidence for the distinct neural basis of linguistic intelligence, because specific lesions in the brain, they can actually lead to very specific language impairments, like the inability to produce grammatically correct sentences or to understand complex speech, for example.
So it's like damaging one specific tool in that brain toolbox, and suddenly that particular function is impaired.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Okay. Let's shift gears a little bit. What about spatial intelligence? What does that tool look like?
So spatial intelligence is all about visual thinking. It's the ability to perceive, to manipulate, and to create mental images of objects and spaces.
Mm.
We see it in architects and sculptors, in navigators, even chess players. They all rely really heavily on being able to see things in their mind's eye.
So it's not just about like artistic expression, it's also about understanding and navigating the physical world around us.
Right, exactly.
Which makes you realize, how vital spatial intelligence is in so many different professions.
Right.
What about its development? Does it show up like early on, like language?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're natural explorers of their physical surroundings. They
Yeah.
build with blocks, they draw pictures, they create these mental maps of their world.
And those early spatial explorations, I mean, they lay the groundwork for more complex spatial reasoning later on, don't they?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, think about an architect envisioning a building in 3 dimensions,
Yeah.
or a surgeon mentally navigating, the intricacies of the human body. I mean, those skills they're built on those early spatial foundations.
It's like those building blocks are way more than just toys.
You know,
They're like tools for developing spatial intelligence.
they are, and research has actually shown that certain regions of the brain, particularly in the right hemisphere, are just crucial for this kind of processing.
Right.
Damage to those areas, it can actually lead to impairments in spatial abilities.
Yeah.
Things like difficulty navigating or recognizing faces, for example.
Oh, wow. And then on the flip side, I mean, people with exceptional spatial intelligence, they might actually have structural differences in those
Yeah,
regions.
exactly.
It really underscores how interconnected our physical brains are with our cognitive abilities. It's just fascinating to consider how these intelligences manifest in such different ways. I mean, we've only touched on two so far, but it feels like we could spend hours unpacking each one.
We really could. I mean, each of these intelligences has such a rich history of research and real world examples. Um, but I think the key takeaway here is that recognizing these multiple intelligences, it really changes the way that we view ourselves and the way that we view other people.
It does. It challenges us to move beyond those narrow definitions of intelligence and
Right.
to appreciate all the diverse ways in which humans think and learn. It's
Yeah.
it's a good reminder that we all have unique strengths to offer the world.
I love that. That's really beautifully put. And that is the real power of this whole concept. It allows us to celebrate those differences and to create a world where everyone can truly thrive. I mean, just imagine the possibilities if we tailored education, workplaces, even just our personal interactions to really honor all these different intelligences.
I know. It's such an inspiring thought. This has been such an incredible deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your insights.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine. It's been a great conversation.
It really has. And for everyone listening out there, until next time, keep exploring that multifaceted universe that is your mind.
Yeah, keep exploring.